It's a Thanksgiving weekend start-sit extravaganza. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Now, obviously, normally I have videos out earlier in the week, and this being a last-minute start-sit video. Really not expecting much out of this, but I do want to do this for the few subscribers that I do have. I do think they're very important, and I very much appreciate all of their loyal viewership that they have had this entire season. So thank you very much. I'm very thankful for all of your subscriptions and all your viewership, and I do this one specifically for you guys. And it's going to be kind of a different video. I'm going to be smashing both my wide receiver and running back start sits together. I don't have a lot of time this week, obviously, for, obvious reasons. We had Thanksgiving. I hosted both my extended family and my immediate family, and it's been a busy week, not to mention at work. I had to go in yesterday, do some work, so I didn't get the normal 4-day weekend off. So it's just been a little bit busy. Hard to find the time to do the video, but I had to do it today. And right now, recording at the exact same time as the Oregon Civil War. That's right, Oregon State playing right now. Oregon up 14-3 currently with 13:48 to go. I do have it going on right down there. So just so I could check in while I'm recording this video. But once again, this video being very important, you guys very important. I want to get this one out, and do want to make a quick note as well that I will not be on 1080 this weekend for our normal start sit on the Fantasy Scramble. So if you guys want to send any start sit questions in, just go ahead and leave some comments. I always make sure to check the comments and reply to any comment that I can. So to start things off, we're going to start with those running back start, and that's going to be, I'm really excited about this, Myles fucking Sanders. It's about time that we see this guy get up and get going, and he had a kind of up and down week last week. Let's face it. He got out, he got all the touches to start, fumbled the ball away. Jordan Howard came out, started getting all the work. Jordan Howard went out with injury. Guess who got the ball back? It was Myles Sanders. It wasn't Boston Scott. He iced out that game. It was great to see, considering Jordan Howard, once again, not going to be playing in Week 12 due to the injury that knocked him out in Week 11. So that gives Sanders a very good, safe floor for rushing, and I do think they are going to involve him a little bit more in the passing game. He was not involved at all last week, so I do think he gets a little bit involved this week in the passing game, and he's got himself a solid matchup. We're talking about a guy last week who had 16 rushes, 94 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, and that is totally in his wheelhouse of what he's capable of doing almost on a week in, week out basis. He always has had a very high yards per carry, and he showed that last week. He's on one of the best running attacks in the NFL in the last 4 weeks. It's kind of funny that he went away on IR, and this turned into the runningest heavy team in the NFL, but that is the case, and he came back and it didn't change. He just got to be the lead back on the team that is running the ball more than anybody else. And that is awesome to see. He got those double-digit touches last week. Now, once again, didn't really get involved in the passing game, but we know that is something that he was involved in early on in the season. They're not really passing the ball a lot. So it isn't expected for him to really get a lot of involvement in the passing because they are running so much. I mean, they're running the ball 40 times to 20 pass attempts. It is literally a 60-40 in favor of the rush right now, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, this team has been winning since they've gone to this formula. They're running the ball with success. They're running the ball against high-end defenses with success. So, we're talking now a matchup with the New York Giants, 27th against the position. have given up over 100 yards to running backs 5 times this season and given up 6 touchdowns on the ground. That's a great formula for success for Miles Sanders, a guy who not only thrives against subpar defenses, but thrives against great defenses. So a guy who you should expect big things from this week. I think he finds the end zone. I think he breaks 100 yards rushing. He's this is kind of almost like, it's almost a revenge game in a different way, right? Because Saquon Barkley was the guy that ran ahead of him at Penn State, right? And he was this guy that was taken top 5 overall in the draft, and New York Giants face of the franchise. And then Miles Sanders went the next year, and he's a second round pick, but he's basically been almost as good, if not better, as Saquon Barkley when he gets the touches. The thing is Saquon Barkley has just been force-fed touches since he's come into the NFL, and we've seen this up and down situation with Miles Sanders. Well, right now I think it's an up situation. He's a guy that you really want in your lineup going against the New York Giants. Another guy who I think is in a really good position to succeed at the running back position, and I've harped on him a lot this season, and I do mean a lot, and that is Antonio Gibson. This guy right now, 68% started, and I think that is justified when you're talking about the rushing volume that he has right now. What he's been doing out of the Washington football team's bye has been quite impressive. In the last 2 weeks, he's averaged 21 and a half rushing attempts, and that honestly is an insane workload. Now, if we can add a few catches into the mix, I think last week he didn't have any catches, and that was a little bit bizarre because he is a guy that he hasn't been super involved in the passing game, but he has had like around 2 to 3 catches every single week, basically until last week. The rushing volume's there. We just want a little bit more in the passing volume, and I think he has a really good opportunity to find the end zone. He's got an amazing matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, which, let's face it, they are a mess right now. They've given up 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs in the last 2 weeks. They are a team right now for to pick on. Washington all season long has been bowing their back, and whether they're winning or losing, they're fighting, and they're scraping and clawing to be in every single game that they're playing in every single Sunday. And Seattle, let's face it, has looked like a team that has folded the last several weeks, and that includes the last 2 weeks that Russell Wilson has been the quarterback. And that's an issue for Seattle, obviously, but that's a great opportunity for Antonio Gibson. This defense is just not up to par for what Seattle has traditionally had. And, the last couple of years it's fallen off, and right now it's a great matchup for Antonio to take advantage of. And then you take into account that the fact that it's a home game for Antonio Gibson, going to be sleeping in his bed. Meanwhile, Seattle has to travel all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast and play this football game. Now, it is a little bit better for them that they're not playing it early in the morning, but the fact is traditionally teams that have to fly from the West Coast to the East Coast, and this is about as west to east as you can get, it's not good for those teams. And so I think the defense is really not going to show up, at least in the first half, for the Seattle Seahawks. I think this is going to be good news for Antonio Gibson. I do think that the Washington football team will obviously be in this game all game long, and so that is good news for Antonio Gibson, because we also know that if it's going to be in favor of Washington trailing, then that's a J.D. McKissic game. But that is not the case this week, and so I do expect a very big, heavy dose of Antonio Gibson. I think it's a great week to deploy him in your lineup. Now, let's talk about some guys that maybe you need to, somebody that needs to put up or shut up. And, right now, I'm not going to say if this guy doesn't put up this week that, he's moved into the bench territory the way that I often do with running backs and wide receivers who are in this situation. It's typically, for me, it's kind of the last straw. You get into the put up or shut up segment, then you're in the you're in jeopardy of being benched. I don't think that of this player, but I do worry about his production recently, and that is Darrell Henderson Jr. 67% started, and he should be started. He's in one of the most high octane offenses in the NFL. He's a guy that is every single week going to have an opportunity to have multiple looks inside the red zone, inside that green zone, to have an opportunity to get into the end zone. And the problem for him is he hasn't been getting a lot of opportunity the last couple weeks. He's a guy that has not topped 15 rushing attempts since week 6. That's an issue, obviously. We're talking about a position that is key to have volume. What are the elite guys at the position? Well, Christian McCaffrey gets a ton of rushing volume, gets a ton of passing volume. Alvin Kamara, a ton of rushing volume, ton of passing volume. Look at how much volume that Jonathan Taylor's getting. Austin Eckler, how much volume is he getting, especially in the passing game? And so Darrell Henderson is kind of lacking on his involvement, right? He's 15 rushes is the most that he's had in a game since week 6. And then when you talk about he is involved in the passing game, but his production in the passing game has been absolutely atrocious. 7 receptions for 13 yards in the last 2 games. That's under a yard a reception. That's really bad. That's a big red flag, and they are already talking about, can Cam Akers come back this season and be a factor? Like, that's not a good thing. Dude tore his ACL just before the beginning of the season, and you're talking about him coming in and replacing Darrell Henderson. That's not going to happen, but that is a big red flag that there are concerns about him in LA. But I just think in reality, this is kind of overlapped with the fact that the LA Rams offense hasn't been as high octane as they were at the beginning of the season. And I think they're going to get back on track. And I think Darrell Henderson's going to get back on track, but Green Bay is a tough but beatable matchup for Henderson. And I do think he is going to need to be involved, because we do need to think about the fact that Green Bay's secondary, take away what happened to them last weekend, but when we take into account that Green Bay has a secondary that has been shutting down wide receivers, we need Henderson to be good so Stafford can be good, right? So they do need to focus on the running game this week. I do think Darrell Henderson's a guy that should be in lineups, but I do worry a little bit about, one, his involvement, how much he's been involved in the rushing game, and that's because it seems like they've been abandoning it a little bit in LA. And then how much he's been involved in the passing game is good, but the lack of production there is very alarming. So to me, it's a put up. Come on, let's get back to the put up. I'm doing this mostly to kind of call him out and get him back on track to being the high-end RB2 that we want him to be. So put up or shut up for Darrell Henderson in week 12. And then let's talk about a couple guys that we need to be aware of in week 12. And that's going to start with Myles Gaskin. And if I was going to do one of my normal stock reports for the running back position, Myles Gaskin would be up. He is a guy that is rising on the stock report. We know what he is. He's right now, he is a mid-range RB2 in PPR formats. But we've also established that on even weeks, he's a guy that you really can't start. And it seems weird, but we've seen this trend all season long. He's been very good on odd weeks. So week 1, week 3, week 5, week 7, week 9, week 11. All of those were good weeks for Myles Gaskin. 2 through 10, those even weeks, he's been not very good and downright pretty terrible in PPR. So we've seen that trend, and now he's got a terrible matchup for him against Carolina, and they are good against running backs, and they are good against pass catching running backs as well. And right now, that's where he's thriving, because he's not going to thrive running between the tackles. And then we take into account that Phillip Lindsay's there now, and Phillip Lindsay, I believe, is going to get inserted into this offense pretty quickly. They are going to give him some opportunities to run the ball, which is obviously suppresses Myles Gaskin a little bit. Now, Lindsay, the one thing I will say, is not a guy that has been heavily involved in the passing game anywhere he's ever been. It's not a big part of his game. So Myles Gaskin's job as a pass catcher is secure, but there is a little bit of worry about the fact that Phillip Lindsay's there to take some of the running game work away from him. And, we'll see. He wasn't great in Houston, but no running back's been great in Houston. So with that said, I think Myles Gaskin, despite the fact that he has been a riser these last couple weeks as far as what his workload is, that he is still a mid-range RB2, but we have kind of established what that pattern is. And honestly, he's going to be a start next week. I already know that. So this week he's a beware. Next week he's going to be a start. And that also has to do a little bit to matchup. And he has not thrived in bad matchups, and he's done much better in good matchups, especially with Tua there. So it does help that Tua's there, but it doesn't help that this is a bad matchup, and he's not doing good in bad matchups. And then this is a team that limits pass catching running backs. So I am very much, I'm preaching this. I have Myles Gaskin. I preached Myles Gaskin his value in the offseason, and I made sure to get Myles Gaskin on my team. However, he is a guy that I want nothing to do with. He will be on my bench in week 12, and I believe he should be more on your bench in week 12. I don't think he should be 62% started in week 12. Another guy to be aware of is Damien Harris. And some have actually caught this, because when I first started working on my notes a little bit earlier in the week, Damien Harris was not as started as he is now, and that's 36% started. So that a few managers have already kind of come off Damien Harris, decided to go another direction. And a big part of this is he is sharing touches with Ramondre Stevens, and it's not even close. When we talk about what their week 11 allotment was, it was 10 rushes to 12 in favor of Stevens. So Damien Harris had 10 rushes. Stevens had 12, and he's involved in the passing game. That's not good for Harris, who's not involved in the passing game. He's a guy that has thrived on volume. So if he's only going to get 10 touches, all you can really expect from him is 50 yards-ish, 45, 40 to 50 yards rushing, and maybe a touchdown. That's not going to do it in PPR. He's a guy you need to be aware of. We need to see how this Ramondre Stevens and Damien Harris backfield continues to maturate. Is it going to continue to be more in favor of Stevens? So a bad start for Damien Harris in week 12. When we think about the Titans, that's a defense right now that has to bow their back. Their offense is riddled with injury. They are down their top 3 wide receivers. They're down, obviously, their number one offensive weapon in Derrick Henry, and they have to do a good job on the defensive side of the game. And they are doing a better job on the defensive side of the game. I still think it's a vulnerable secondary, but they are doing a good job to running backs. They've held running backs to 75 yards or less and just 2 touchdowns since week 6. They have been bowing their back in that in that phase of the game. And then when you talk about his lack of involvement in the passing game, he is a must score a touchdown in order to even give you a decent floor. We're not even talking about a good game. We're just talking about a decent floor. He needs a touchdown in PPR formats. Obviously, he's a little bit better in standard, but I don't want to play him in standard either, considering how many touches he's getting. we kind of need that floor of 15 touches at the running back position in order to feel good about deploying him in our lineup. And right now, you're only at 66% of that with 10 touches in week 11. So beware Damien Harris. And then let's move on. We got some wide receivers that we need to talk about as well. And once again, happy holidays. Hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving. I hope it's not been too crazy for you. I know how crazy Thanksgiving weeks can be. It's been a little insane over here, but a good start this week. A guy that I really, at this point, I just think that he's a guy that depending on what your wide receiver position is looking like, and granted, there are going to be plenty of rosters out there that are going to have a hard time maybe finding this guy in. They're going to have to force him into the flex position, but that's Elijah Moore, a guy that's 41% started, and he has been insanely good since the bye, having a floor of 10.3 PPR points since the bye is a very good floor. Now, obviously, you want more than 10 points in PPR, but if that's going to be your floor, that's safety, right? And then when we think about the fact that he has scored over 27.4 PPR points twice since the bye, and so that's out of 5 games. He's been over 27 points in 2 of 5 games. You do the math. That's 40% of the time this guy is not just booming, but booming. And then you think about the fact that in his last 5 games, once again, 5 games since the bye, 5 touchdowns. He's been finding the end zone. He's been highly involved. He's had a good floor of targets. They have used him a little bit in the rushing game, not too much, a little bit, but they've been creative with more, and he has been finding success out of the bye. And that's what we normally see for wide receiver rookies is coming out of the bye, is when they start taking their leap in the NFL. He had a little bit of an earlier bye. And coincidentally, I will say this has happened at the same time as other quarterbacks playing the position than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson will be back in week 12, and that is where there is a little bit of trepidation. Why I think he's still only 41% started is because of Zach Wilson. But the fact is, they've kind of started figuring out a formula as to how to make this offense work. And I imagine that they've been coaching him up the last several weeks to try to get him. It doesn't have to be dumping the ball off to the running backs the way that, White was, but he does need to deliver good balls to Moore. He doesn't need to be constantly looking down the field for the home run hit. Corey Davis is not going to be playing for him this week, and that just raises Moore's floor. So if it wasn't for the fact that Corey Davis wasn't playing, he probably wouldn't be such a start for me. He probably wouldn't be in this segment for me. But Corey Davis isn't there, and that really was Zach Wilson's kind of safety blanket to start the season. So if Zach Wilson's not gonna have Corey Davis, he's gonna have to look somewhere else. And right now, the best place to look is Elijah Moore. I am preaching what I'm saying. I'm finding a way to get Moore in my lineup. It once again will probably be as a flex. So Moore, a good start for this week. Really excited to have him ready to rock and roll. A guy that I think is in a great position to succeed this week is Marquise Brown. Now, why is he in this segment? Dude's like basically made it into the must-start territory. 49% started, guys, and that is as of midday Friday. He's 49% started, and that is why he's in this segment. He has moved into the must-start territory, and why is he not started? Well, part of it has to do with the quad injury. So, to me, we'll get to that, But first off is Lamar Jackson will be back in the starting lineup in week 12. He, obviously he wasn't there week 11. That hurt the entire wide receiving core. Marquise Brown didn't play in week 11. That had to do with his quad injury. He was kind of He was limited last week, didn't go. He's been limited this week, but it sounds like he will be playing this week. Earlier, Watkins talked about finally getting all three guys back on the field healthy and looking good. So I think Marquise Brown has a really good chance of playing this week. So he's a guy that's averaged 13 targets in his last 3 games. Obviously, that coincides with Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson's under center. Marquise Brown's there. He's been getting a lot of targets, and that includes games that Rashad Bateman's been playing, games that Sammy Watkins been playing. So he has been still the alpha dog in the target department, and he does have a better chance of booming and getting those multi-touchdown games, those long touchdowns that we love. He has a better chance than that than most wide receivers. So he's a guy that you really want to find a way to get in your lineup. Try to get him in your lineup. And if you're worried, then try to acquire Rashad Bateman. Now, right now, he's 45% rostered. And this is a guy that can be acquired as insurance for Brown. I suppose you could go Watkins as well, but I honestly think if you're going to go insurance, it's Bateman if Marquise Brown isn't going to play. And the reason you kind of do want to make sure that if you're going to play Brown, you have a little bit of insurance for him, it's because he's playing the late night game on Sunday night. So we aren't going to have official word on Brown until almost it's too late. You're only going to have that late night game to fill with players, alternates, and that Monday night game. And right now, I want to get the alternates that are in probably a better opportunity to score. That's Rashad Bateman, not the guys on the Washington football team or the Seattle Seahawks. So right now, Marquise Brown, go ahead. If you can, acquire Rashad Bateman, get him on your roster. If Brown doesn't go, just click Bateman in the roster. And I really do think he's about to boom. Like, Bateman's going to have a great opportunity to boom here soon. He's at a good floor, but we haven't really seen a ceiling yet. And I think that's coming. And if Brown doesn't play, then obviously that, I think, is great for Bateman and having a great ceiling. So if you're going to play Brown, which I think is like I said, in the must-start territory, then just try to have Bateman as insurance to go a different direction if you need to. A guy that needs to put up or shut up, man, I hate putting this there. I really do. If you've been watching my channel for long, then you know how what my affinity is for Jerry Jeudy coming into the season, what my expectations for him were. Coming into the season, I thought he had wide receiver 1 upside coming into this season, and now he's in my put up or shut up heading into week 12. Granted, he's only played in 4 games, but the fact of the matter is he really hasn't put up anything impressive so far in this season. He's got a stable target volume in the passing game. It gives him a safe PPR floor with all of the targets that he has got. Like, he's a guy that has been kind of a safety blanket for Teddy Bridgewater in a way that a tight end might be, but that also has led to an unimpressive yards per reception. He's got 10.4 yards per reception this season with no touchdowns. So that gives him he's had a safe floor for the most part. Gets enough receptions, and obviously off those receptions enough volume to give you 10 to 12 points, but he's not giving you the boom. You want to get into the 20s with Jerry Jeudy, right? He's got that volume, but he's not giving you the boom to get you into the 20-point range. And can Jerry Jeudy overcome that? Can he overcome average quarterback play? If you looked at Teddy Bridgewater's stats, you'd be like, yeah, I like that guy. Man, I'd take that guy. And then you watch him actually play the football game, and you're like, oh, limitations. And he is right now limiting the wide receivers in this wide receiver core, and that obviously is headlined by Jerry Jeudy. And can he overcome this average quarterback play and the routes that he has to run? And he doesn't have really a downfield game right now. He's got a competition for targets and Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, and I mean, what's that going to be now that those guys got paid? Are they going to try to force feed those guys? Or is Jerry Jeudy now going to kind of have to like fall in line because Cortland Sutton got paid to be a number one? So that makes me worry a little bit about Jerry Jeudy. And then we have a tough matchup with the LA Chargers. Let's face it, the LA Chargers secondary has been really good this season against wide receivers. It's been a tough matchup. It's tough for Jeudy. He's got to fight for targets with Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and then you have a limited quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. I need him to put up. I need him to fucking put up, for the love of God. I just need it so bad. I have him on all of my rosters, man. Like, I just was so excited for this guy, and now I'm just like, brr, 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 brr. He just has just fallen so flat. It's unfortunate, but true. Need Jerry Jeudy to put up. A couple guys to beware. Now, these are guys that aren't too heavily started. And that's good, honestly. It's very good. We need to get away from these guys. At least one of them we need to get away from one, and the other one we need to see what's going on. And that starts with Jarvis Landry. 30% started. Jarvis Landry, oh my God, this is a guy I kind of had after the Odell Beckham trade as a guy going up in stock, but now not so much. His stock is just gone. And why is that? Well, it's his insane lack of production in 2021. And I have gone down on record, even when he was in Miami, and everybody's loved this guy, man. It was always fucking 10 catches for like 80 yards or 12 catches for 110 yards and never any touchdowns. And so he was really good in PPR formats, but dude needed an insane amount of volume that any elite wide receiver, if they got that amount of volume, they would be like Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams, right? But he was fucking Jarvis Landry. He was honestly like DJ Moore, good, not great. Unless you add on the 10 points of free fucking whatever production. But now he's just a guy that just sucks, right? Insane lack of production. He's had no more than 37 yards receiving in 5 of his 7 games. No more than 37 yards receiving in 5 of his 7 games. Just kind of let that sink in just for a second there. He was saved in week 11 by a rare 16-yard rushing touchdown. So that was weird. But he really needed that 16-yard rushing touchdown to save his week. And he's averaging 6.4 yards per reception in 5 of his 7 games. That's 108 yards on 17 receptions. I just don't really want to spend a lot of time on Jarvis Landry. It is just this is honestly a holy shit, why is he even on your roster anymore type of situation, let alone starting. To me, you need something else. You need to transition somewhere else. Jarvis Landry is a guy that you can fucking drop. He is pathetically bad this year, and just because he saved his week 11 with a rare 16-yard rushing touchdown doesn't mean that he saved himself in your lineup. You need to find a way to transition away from Jarvis Landry. And then another guy, this guy's a guy I just don't want to play this week because I still need to see where he's going, how his role is going to develop, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. 29% started. So there are owners out there that really do feel safe enough to have this guy in their lineup after what they saw before the bye, which was really nothing. And I guess expecting something really happening coming out of the bye. But I need to see what that role is before I put him in my lineup. Let's face it, guys. We're week 12. We need wins. We don't need half-assed Hail Marys with Odell Beckham Jr. in our flex. Let's face it. You can find a better start, a better wide receiver, a better flex than Odell Beckham Jr. to give you a better opportunity to win in week 12. Like, what are we doing here? We don't even know what the fuck his role is. Cooper Kupp's the alpha dog, guys. Cooper Kupp's the alpha dog. They still like Van Jefferson. They've been talking about we need to get our tight ends more involved. Like, this guy has not been good for several years. We got to see it, guys. We got to see it. Green Bay, legit tough matchup. Let's face it. Green Bay has been, we'll take what they did against Minnesota, and we're going to throw that one out. We're going to Azer stat this, and we're going to take away our week 11 and look at what Green Bay has done to wide receivers this season. I want nothing to do with that if I am a Odell Beckham Jr. manager. I want to look elsewhere because there are better starts in week 12. What are we doing here? Why is there 29% of managers that think that this guy's a good start, a good flex, a good anything? He hasn't been good for several years. Let's face it. Let's get over it. Time for him to sit on your bench one more week. Let's see what happens with Odell. Let's see what's going on. Let's see if they actually insert him into this offense, get him running routes, get him some targets. Because right now, what did he do? He caught a curl route before the bye, and he didn't do shit. So beware. You put Odell Beckham in there. He is a legit Hail Mary at the flex. I'd like to thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Once again, no fantasy scramble this week. We'll be back up and running next week. Get you guys going on the playoffs here as they rapidly approach. If you have any start-sit questions, make sure to leave them in my comment section or hit me up at PDX_EFF on Twitter, and I will hit you back with who I think you should have in your lineup. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.